It is time to check in with Amanda Lang, CTV News Chief Financial Correspondent, taking a look at the weekend business. I guess, Amanda, it would only be appropriate if we talked about really, I guess we have to call it the big business story in this country. The various major projects that Mark Carney has announced, and continues to announce. He's in Montreal today. I just want to get your reaction to this. I know jobs are involved. People have heard this before. And, of course, the opposition is saying, well, wait a sec. For everything that's new here, most of it is not. What's your take on what you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that in the sense that they're not, inventing things out of whole cloth. These are projects we've been aware of. What's new is maybe more subtle and maybe will take longer term to play out. But the very existence of the Major Projects Office, which is kind of aimed at creating kind of a whole of government approach to these things, the idea is that we will speed them along. So the fact that they get put on this list means there's one kind of regulatory window. There will be federal dollars that'll hopefully attract private capital. And that the idea is that you'll kind of smooth the path, whatever the regulatory barriers are. Now, I mean, I don't know, you may have noticed, Aaron, that already with a couple of these, there are sort of indigenous groups that are saying, well, we aren't signed on to this. So it's not without complexity still, but the hope is that over the next, let's say, 18 months to 2 years, they say a 2-year window, you do start to see real action and movement. These aren't immediate investments and immediate returns for sure.
So, the other story, I guess, and this only came out, I think, this morning or possibly yesterday, the Parliamentary Budget Office coming out and suggesting, these numbers that were thrown around in the budget, they will be grossly exceeded, creative accounting by the Prime Minister here. I know most Canadians, and I think we may have talked about this last week, look at this budget, there are no real meat and potatoes issues, right? You can't say, I'm going to go to the grocery store and this is finally going to cost less. It's very generic in a sense, I think, for the average Canadian. Do you think Canadians care that this is actually going to be more than the Prime Minister is promising it's going to be?
I mean, I think Canadians care, but I would say that most people have bought the message that this isn't the time to care too much, if I can put it that way. Even people who like to see a balanced budget, that we got kind of trained in the 90s and we think that's a good idea, can appreciate that this is sort of a pivotal moment in our economic history and we might need to spend a little bit here. I'm very interested in this particular parliamentary budget officer's, the strength of his language, because remember, even before the budget, he was using very extreme language about the fiscal situation. One of the things he's raising, and again, super technical, do people care? I don't know. There's a new way of accounting, right? It's this whole kind of capital versus operating budget approach. He's raising the issue that it's open to abuse. And of course it is. But by the way, that's why we have a PBO. We want, the Auditor Generals and our parliamentary budget officers to look at these things and tell us how we're doing. So I'm glad he's flagging it and he'll keep everybody honest. I would say politically, it's probably not going to move a lot of people.
Pretty interesting in that report to read that the federal government plans to borrow about $80 billion this year. That's according to the budget. I mean, the numbers have blown past everything we've ever had before, so maybe that's why it kind of goes over the head of pretty much everyone except maybe economists.
Yeah, although, we can also bring it back home by saying that, once again, the single biggest spending item by our government is interest on debt. So first is transfers to old people, and then the second biggest item is, we're just sending interest out the door. And as we all know, that's like your credit card payment, right? So it's not ideal. It's just like paying only the interest on your mortgage and no principal. You know how that feels. It's not great. You're not building up equity. So if the idea is the debt's okay because it's for long-term investments, yes, but it's still something you have to grapple with from your existing budget for those interest payments. So we should care about that.
It does bring up that famous expression, right? One day, sooner or later, the chickens will come home to roost. I just wonder if that's 10 years away or 110 years away, because it seems most of us just can't figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And let's remember that it's not really we that determine it. It's global markets. So the thing that can happen is if the world says, hey, wait, Canada may not be as reliable as we thought, they just start pricing our debt more expensively. So every additional dollar of debt means that we pay more for that, and those interest charges go up and up. That's that sort of terrible spiral you get into that we briefly reverse. I mean, I'm old enough. You might not even be, but I remember the Paul Martin, Jean Chrétien duo that got us into surplus. And what that means actually is the reverse, right? There's a virtuous circle where your investments are making money instead of you're paying interest on debt all the time, which is something that we should probably aim for.
You ever think we could get back to that? Even to hear that word surplus in government seems completely, illogical.
I don't see why not. I mean, honestly, there are a few things that we could, and I will tell you this, I'm very interested that the notion of raising the GST is very much in the zeitgeist. I was pondering whether it would be in this budget. It's a hard one, right? People don't like it for political reasons, so minority government might have a hard time introducing that one. But most economists that I've seen agree the structural hole that 2% reduction in GDP introduced is with us still, and that will be one place to start. And look, if we need to spend a certain amount, our tax base needs to support it. So you need to start asking the questions of where does the money come from and is it worth spending? That's why balance is important, right? It makes you ask those questions. Otherwise, you just spend willy-nilly and, people just have free reign.
Let's talk about markets. We started by talking about globally outside of here. It's a strange week in U.S. markets for a couple of different reasons. Number one, the U.S. government shutdown, which apparently everyone had been waiting for, finally ended, and markets reacted by going the other way. There is concern. First, it was the AI bubble. I'm not sure that's entirely over with. But then I looked today, the Canadian dollar, we're at about $1.42 now. And I know that's supposed to be obviously good for exports, but it's been a while since we've been that high.
Yeah. I mean, I think markets are, it's interesting to see them, as you say, what you perceive as good news for Main Street economically is bad news for Wall Street. And some of the reasons for that has to do with, their expectations about what the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada will do on interest rates. But in this case, there was sort of an additional overlay of AI bubble kind of fears. That will be with us for a while. That there was a bit of a tech sell-off this week. And also, I will say, whatever you think about stocks and how well they're valued or undervalued, overvalued, whatever you think, they're valued highly enough that if companies disappoint on their earnings, you will see downdrafts. Now, maybe they'll just pick right back up again, but we saw a little bit of that this week as well with some companies disappointing, and then you see sort of just the wind coming out of the sails as investors say, oops, maybe it's time to get out of here and take some profit.
To that end, so I guess one of the issues on the U.S. side was there were some, some harsher comments with respect to potential interest rate cuts, and that's what everyone apparently had been waiting for. Where are we on that? Are we following that lead? Do you expect there will be another rate cut now, given what's going on? And we did, by the way, at decent job numbers most recently for Canada. So what does that portend?
I mean, that really kind of solidifies, I think, the view here that the bank might pause. The bank certainly, our central bank certainly gave notice that it's willing to pause as long as it feels it can. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get another move this year. Most economists think we'll still head lower in the new year before we go higher. But really, this will be so dependent on events, right? So you can forgive a bank for wanting to keep its powder dry a little bit and not ease ahead of trouble and then not have anywhere to go. Because that's sort of that's all the central bank can do to help the economy, right? Is drop rates. So they don't want to get too far in front of that. I will say before this budget, Tiff Macklem, our central bank governor, said, I've done what I can do on inflation. It's really up to fiscal policy to help the economy. I wonder what he thinks and whether there was enough sort of near-term stimulus in the budget. Lots of long-term structural stuff that's really good. Is there enough near-term is a good question.
All right, we got to wrap it up. I will just ask you one last thing. Sunday, Grey Cup game, Montreal versus Saskatchewan. Who you got?
Oh, it's got to be Saskatchewan.
What?
I mean, my roots are out
there.
Well,
hold on.
Sorry.
You're on a Montreal radio station, right?
I know, but my family's from Saskatchewan.
Oh, no.
It's just got to be. Apologies.
Okay, that's all right.
But, good luck to everybody.
It stings a bit, but I think we'll be okay. Amanda Lang. Amanda, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Clear. Thanks, Amanda.
Okay, thanks.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.